Okay, so today's webinar is about whether or not you should or should not quit the practice of law. The reason I'm doing this webinar and I like this topic is because there's a lot of people practicing law that really shouldn't be practicing law. And I'm going to tell you why right now. And your skills could be much better used in a much different profession or a related profession than practicing law. And so these are things that you should consider when you're considering whether or not to go through with this as a career. And a lot of people, I would say probably 20 to 30% of people that went to school and got law degrees probably should not be practicing law. And so I'm going to kind of tell you about that today and the things to look for and the things to think about when you're not, if you not choose not to practice law, and why might be a very good decision for you. I know countless people that went to law school and then went into other careers, and the ability to persevere and work the way that attorneys do to pass the bar and to go to law school actually are skills that benefit you in many, many other professions. And you should try to be in professions where you're going to have the absolute most luck of succeeding and be able to do the best in your career. And then at the same time, one of the things that I often notice is the most talented attorneys, the people that really should be practicing law, end up quitting. And I'll tell you about the reasons that they do that and why that's not always the best decision. In terms of a topic, like I think this is probably one of the more important topics you could ever listen to, because you actually may be making a mistake if you're thinking about leaving the practice of law, or you're making a mistake continuing to practice. And when I talk to attorneys all the time from large law firms quite often that make the decision to quit law, but in most of the cases they're doing it for the wrong reasons. They're often quitting when they're associates, which are kind of a time, when you're maybe not, having the best experience practicing law because you don't yet have clients, and you're unable to kind of understand the long-term benefits of what it means when you are able to start practicing in a different way. And then other people practice law just because of or quit because it's too stressful or they don't like the hours, and those are often also the wrong reasons, because you may not be in the right practice area and all sorts of other reasons. One of the things too that I just kind of wanted to notice as an aside that's very funny to me, as a lot of attorneys, and it's very, very common for attorneys to kind of fantasize about quitting the practice of law, and even partners that I talk to, that to the extent that they have their own firms or their partners in major firms, are always kind of thinking about doing something else that doesn't involve the practice of law, like starting a business or following a hobby or something along those lines. And if you are thinking about it, it's actually very, very normal to think about quitting the practice of law. Many people even give up before they start, when they have a difficult time finding a position, or they kind of come up against some setbacks very, very early in their career. For example, attorneys get fired early in their career, sometimes in as few as a few months, and give up. Other people are in good firms often, and when there's economic contractions, people in practice areas like corporate may be let go. So there's all sorts of, and then they end up giving up the practice of law even though they're at top firms. So I'm going to tell you today why you should quit the practice of law and why you shouldn't. And I hope this is a very helpful presentation, because I know that many people think about this, and many people that are practicing law often shouldn't be. So I'm going to tell you if you fit into that kind of background today, and then we'll kind of go from there. So first is why you should quit the practice of law. The first thing is that if you just really, detest the work, and I'm not talking about like the people you work for, I'm talking about the actual work itself. So some people just do not like the work itself of being a lawyer and what that means. So if a litigator, doesn't enjoy writing, doesn't enjoy making arguments, doesn't enjoy kind of the stress that goes along with all that, probably should not be a litigator. So there's lots of people that may be hired originally in that practice area. It's the most common practice area to get positions in, because most attorneys are litigators and not transactional attorneys. So if you're very unhappy doing that, and you don't see yourself doing well in it, and you don't see yourself ever being happy doing that, you probably want to get into another practice area. Litigation is probably not the right thing for you. The same thing goes with corporate attorneys. That tends to be a very detail-oriented practice area, drafting lots of documents and negotiating different sorts of deals. And if that's something you don't enjoy, then you probably shouldn't be doing that either. And the same thing with patent attorneys or real estate attorneys. If you don't actually like the work, then you shouldn't be doing it. Because if you don't like the work, you're going to be competing against people that actually do like the work. And people that do like the work are going to work harder, they're going to have fun doing it, and they're going to be just much, much better than you. So you should never be doing first, primarily a practice area you don't enjoy, because if you're doing a practice area you don't enjoy, you're never really going to be good at it. And you'll never really see the light at the end of the tunnel because it's just not going to work for you. So if a practice area doesn't work for you, then you can always switch to another practice area. But if just any practice area that you can think of is not something you enjoy and is unappealing, then you probably should be doing something else. One thing I also wanted to bring up kind of at the beginning is that sometimes people don't like the practice of law when they're in the wrong practice area because they're up against attorneys that are constantly better than them, and they're making them feel badly about themselves, and they don't have the ability to do a good job in transactions or the ability to do a good job in writing motions and all the things that attorneys do. And many times it's just a question of kind of the type of firm you're in, doing the type of work you're doing. So there are practice areas where your interpersonal skills often matter a lot more than your legal skills. One practice area that I can think of like that is family law. Another one is immigration. So a lot of times when you're doing practice areas where you're working for individuals instead of up against other people that are working for companies, you may actually be very good at that practice area. And it doesn't matter how well you did in the LSAT. It doesn't matter what your grades were like. You can often do very, very well in certain practice areas like that. Even personal injury is one where it's more about your ability to bring in clients than it is your legal skills most of the time. I've seen, attorneys quit the practice of law and become truck drivers. I had one person that was had worked at a major firm, and I just couldn't believe it when they submitted their resume. They'd worked at this like major law firm in New York, and then had become a truck driver. And that was actually something that they enjoyed. They liked driving around in a truck. I've seen at least a few people become screenwriters, some very famous screenwriters. I've seen people become actors. I've seen people, follow their dream and open bike shops, open insurance companies, all sorts of different professions that you would never think an attorney would do. But actually, in many cases, they're much more financially successful, and they're also much happier than they ever would have been practicing law. And they go much farther in their careers doing things that they actually enjoy and where their skills go much farther. And if you have practiced law for a few years, you'll often be very surprised because you'll go out into the world where people that aren't as motivated and often not as smart as you are competing in other businesses, and you can actually do very, very well. For example, many attorneys are very, very good at selling things or marketing things, and they're much happier doing that than being into conflict with other people, which is something that people often do when they're working in law firms. And so people can switch into things that they're much more interested in, and at the same time, they can say that they have a law degree or they're an attorney. So that can be something that people enjoy. But whatever, it is about the practice of law, if it's something that, you believe cannot be fixed in terms of doing the work, you just don't enjoy it, then you should be doing something else. Because what practicing law essentially is it's reading different documents, coming up with counter arguments that are better, drawing conclusions, and having the ability to read and synthesize a lot of information in a way that's more digestible by a client, court, or whoever you're dealing with on the other side. So that's really what attorneys do. And it's never going to change. You're always in the practice of law up against some force. If you're a trust and estates attorney, you're up against people in the future trying to undo different trusts you may have, drafted, or wills and things like that. If you're doing that in litigation, it's the same thing. If you're doing that in transactions, it's the same thing. So it's the idea that your work is always going to be looked over. Someone's going to try to poke holes in it. and the work is going to have to be able to hold up to scrutiny, whether you're a litigator or a patent attorney having their patents examined by the Patent and Trademark Office. Whatever it is, the work that you're doing is something that other people are going to be looking over and trying to find fault with. And if that's not something you enjoy, then it's not something you should be doing. So attorneys are people that will try to put together arguments and documents that they're going to assume other people are going to try to attack. And it exists in pretty much every single practice area. Personal injury involves the defense attorneys trying to come after you. Trust in the states. Immigration involves the government trying not to accept immigration petitions. Every single job that an attorney does involves somebody trying to attack your work. And that's just something that you need to be aware of if you're going to continue practicing law. And also the knowledge that there are going to be very, very good people that you'll be up against trying to critique your arguments. And if you are unable to do well at that, then you're never really going to go as far as you might be capable of doing in another profession. But there are things you can change. Like I said earlier, you can change your practice area. Many people are much happier when they do different types of practice areas than they may be doing. So for example, a lot of litigators will do things like become family law attorneys. They just like dealing with people more than they would have enjoyed dealing with, working on behalf of companies. They like that personal contact. If you don't like working long hours, there's plenty of practice areas that don't involve working long hours, and there's plenty of firms that don't involve working long hours. So practice areas like trust and estates and tax are two practice areas where traditionally attorneys don't work as long of hours. The same thing with patent law. So you can always work in a different practice area, or more than likely work in a different environment. So you can work in boutique firms where there's not as many hours. You can work in, mid-sized firms where there's not as many hours. You can work in markets where there's not as many hours. So most of the long hours that attorneys work tend to be in large cities with large firms. So anytime you move to a smaller market, there typically is going to be a different type of work ethic that you'll be around in the practicing law in a different environment where there's not as many people working long hours that you're competing with actually can change things quite a bit. One example that I can think of is it's very common for attorneys from New York City, for example, to move to upstate New York. Oftentimes they're from there and then they go back and they have worked these crazy hours and incredible amounts of stress in large law firms. And then they relocate to upstate New York, and suddenly like they're home for their family for dinner every night at 5:30. They're not working crazy hours in the weekends, and they're actually much happier. And they probably never could have imagined that when they were in large law firms. And they're able to stick with working for law firms their entire career. And just one quick point that I did want to note is that anytime you're thinking about leaving working in a law firm as your career, you're making a big career choice. And the reason is that if you become a law firm attorney and you're able to stick with it and you're able to find the right environment, you essentially have a job as long as you're alive, because you can always open your own practice. But more likely than not, if you stick working with a law firm, you can develop your own clients. You can do all these things that give you the ability to have a career for the rest of your life if you want. And that doesn't happen if you move in-house or move into the government. Those positions typically do not last as long. And in fact, most in-house attorneys end up having several in-house jobs over their career and never have that type of employment stability. And again, you can always leave the practice of law if you don't like working for other people. You can even be a contract attorney, and that gives you flexibility to work for a lot of places on the short term. So these are the things you can fix, but you never can fix if you don't like the work. And you have to distinguish between liking the work and not liking the work. And not liking the work may mean working long hours, but actually liking the work. So if you like the work, then it's probably something that you should continue with, and just think about things like your environment and your practice area instead. So, and then you should also quit the practice of law if it's just not the right fit for you. So, what I told you about earlier is, you may be losing most of the cases you're in or having people run circles around you. You may not be accurate and have the ability to be very, very detail oriented and make mistakes. And you may often have a difficult time understanding what you're doing. And there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't mean you're not smart. It just means that you don't have necessarily this natural skill for practicing law. And practicing law means you have to be very, very careful and detailed in your work. And it means you have to try to get a best result for your clients, regardless if you're a litigator or corporate attorney or whatever you do. That has to be something that's very, very interesting to you. And you have to feel like you're going to constantly improve. And you also have to want to be someone that has a natural inclination to want to help others behind the scenes. And that has to be really something that motivates you. Some people are motivated more by helping themselves or by helping a greater number of people, maybe by starting businesses or nonprofits. But if you're practicing law, you typically have to be motivated by helping one person or one company, and that has to really get you motivated. And if it's not, then it's not something you should be doing. So a lot of people think that their ability to pass the bar or go to a good law school shows that they should be an attorney. And that doesn't have anything to do with the sorts of results that you may be able to get clients. And really, be something you should think about. So one example that I heard once from an attorney that was a recruiter for me is he had a brother who was, I don't know if it was borderline retarded or on the spectrum, but he'd gotten all these special accommodations to take the bar exam. I think he told me, and again, I don't want to be quoted on this or anything, but he was given a week to take a 2-day bar exam. And when he started practicing law, he opened his own practice and defended people against traffic citations and that sort of thing, and literally would drive to a law library to look up some sort of statute that, to have something explained to him by reading a statute. When he thought about it, he could have just looked it up on the internet of his desk. I mean, this is a guy that had some issues. And, sometimes you may just not have that skill set. And if you think to people that have skill sets in different professions, obviously athletes have a certain type of skill set, business tycoons have a certain type of skill set, rock stars have a certain type of skill set, and most of these people probably would not be very good attorneys. It's just not their skills, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just they have a different type of skill that people that are, the people that aren't attorneys would have. And so you may have skills that are just completely different. And no one expects a business tycoon to be good at practicing law. They probably wouldn't be. They're doing what they're good at. So the last thing you should be doing is unleashing skills on the world that maybe that you don't have the aptitude for, when you're just not likely that you're going to do well for the people that you're helping. And I believe personally that everyone, if you think back to your past and things, I'm sure there are things that you just ended up having some sort of natural ability for, because almost everyone is gifted by God with some natural abilities, and you should be trying to use those skills, because if you do, you're just going to go so much farther than if you remain practicing law, where you may not have the skills to do well. And like I said earlier, I mean, you need to have the ability to be detail oriented, and you have to enjoy that. Otherwise, you're just going to miss all sorts of things, whether it's deadlines or arguments you'll make mistakes in documents. And most attorneys that are very good at this profession take a lot of pride in catching small errors. They love reading things closely and finding small things and then improving those. And they also need to be able to comprehend a lot of different types of things and anticipate other people's arguments and be able to look at lots of information and reach conclusions from that information. That's a skill. And they also need to be very interested in other people's problems, meaning other people are out there doing things, whether it's the person getting into an auto accident and needing someone to help them, or a company needing people to help them, or various people, just whether you're a criminal law attorney, whatever it is, you have to be interested in solving other people's problems. And most of the time, if you're working for any type of company, you're often helping people that have started businesses and things. And you have to be someone that's more interested in helping people that have started businesses and are running them than someone that would be interested in starting a business yourself. And And it's the same thing with going to see a doctor. If you were very sick with something, you would want to go see a doctor who was very, very good at what they were doing. You would want to find the best doctor, because if you didn't, it could hurt you. So the last thing in the world you should be doing is participating in a profession where you may not be that interested in it, where you're not using your skills to the best of your ability, and it's just not going to help you at all. I mean, why would you do something that you can never see yourself enjoying or being good at? It just doesn't make any sense. And so many people do this. They're just kind of resigned to the job. They continue doing it and they're not happy. One piece of advice I also want to give you, if you're a young attorney, what young attorneys often do is they start out the practice of law and they may not like it, but they do it for 2 or 3 years. Then suddenly they get married and they buy houses and they lease cars or buy cars, and then they have kids, and it's too late for them to go and do something else because they have all of these expenses and all of these obligations, and then they stay practicing law and are very, very unhappy. And when they're unhappy, things happen like they aren't unable to stay married, or they have substance abuse problems. So just all sorts of things can happen. And you don't want to be in a profession that just drains you and doesn't make you happy. You want to be in a profession that you like. So if you've been doing it for a few years, I would caution you not to get tied down with unnecessary expenses and things early in your career, because you may want to be able to do something different. And so just think about yourself. I'm just giving you this example. If you didn't play basketball, you weren't good at it, and suddenly you had to go play with a professional team or even a college team. I mean, you would get booed off the court and not do well. You would harm the team. And that would not be a good decision for you. So you have to be working and doing things that you enjoy. And for me, for example, when I first discovered this profession of legal recruiting, I realized that it was a very good use of my skills. I understood it. I liked it. Was motivated, do well at it, and throw myself into it 100%. And that's something I like. And it's something I'm good at, and it's not practicing law. And it's just in the same way, there's nothing wrong with you being bad at basketball. It's just, if I were to do that, I would be completely incompetent. And I probably would also be incompetent being a corporate attorney. That's not the type of work I like. There's all sorts of things that I'm good at, and recruiting is one of them, but practicing different types of law is not something I would enjoy. I remember working with a graduate of Harvard Law School, and she'd been fired from a major law firm that I worked in, and she was fired. And keep in mind, this is a graduate from Harvard Law School. One of the things that she had a difficult time understanding was the difference between federal and state law. So she would draft motions and things and would cite state law that wasn't applicable to a federal case, and make these sort of stupid mistakes that you would think, if you're a litigator, you would understand quite easily. But she had issues with that, and she was able to get a job with a good firm, but at the same time was not the sort of person that should be an attorney. I mean, these are serious mistakes that, people should catch on to very, very quickly. So if you shouldn't be an attorney and you continually get this sort of feedback and you're continually having issues explaining things or understanding things, then you probably should be doing something else or in a practice area that matches your skill set better. And then the other thing that I, brought up earlier, but attorneys have to be more interested in helping others than concerned with themselves. I mean, it's essentially, the practice of law is about putting yourself in a situation and where you're helping other people with their problems and or companies. And that has to be something you get excited about. You have to get excited about being able to get behind other people and making sure that they get the best result, regardless how much you may believe in whatever their mission is. I mean, or whatever their situation is, whether it's a criminal or a company dumping waste. You have to be very interested in helping those sorts of people. And you have to have something inside of you that naturally gets you motivated and excited to help someone. And if this isn't something that concerns you, and you're not interested in this, then you should not be an attorney. I mean, you have to really think about where your motivation lies. And there's nothing wrong with you being motivated to do something else or, in some other direction. But unless you're not motivated by helping other people, and you have to really think about that. Is this something that gets you excited? If you're not interested in that, then you probably should not be practicing law. And you just need to think about that. Do other people's problems get you excited? Does solving other people's problems make you feel good? And if it doesn't, then you're in the wrong profession. And this is not something that law school screens for. It's not something that you'll typically get grades of any type for having this sort of motivation. This sort of motivation needs to be internal. And if it's internal, it's something that does, motivate you internally, then you're in the right profession. But many times also, you may be in an environment that doesn't give you that sort of satisfaction in terms of what you're doing. So you may be in an environment where you're practicing law and you're doing something like document review, and that doesn't have anything to do with helping clients. You may be in an environment where you're just dealing with unpleasant, mindless work and unpleasant people, and that doesn't have anything to do with clients. And then you should probably try to switch your environment. And there's nothing wrong with not liking the environment you're in if you're not being given work that doesn't kind of feed that interest of helping other people. But if you are in that sort of environment, and not if you think that changing that environment is going to make you happy, then that's a good thing. You should probably just look into switching your environment. One other point that I also made earlier was you want to be in a practice area that gives you that sort of satisfaction. So if you think that you don't feel connected to the problems of companies and that's too abstract for you, you maybe want to go in a practice area where you're helping individuals. And a lot of people are happier then because they actually can see and work with the people that they're helping. I've seen all sorts of people go into the government or being public defenders or public service, helping the poor, and all sorts of other jobs that are practicing law where they feel much more connected to what they're doing and like they're doing something positive. It's very common, for example, for people from Yale Law School to go in all these different types of public interest roles, and they're often doing that because they're kind of seeing a bigger picture that they can help more people by doing something like public service than just being a traditional attorney, which to them is often very limiting because you're not making the type of impact that someone that in public service or government would be capable of doing. So, but if you're not motivated by this naturally, then you have to really think about that, and you also have to put yourself in the shoes of whomever you're trying to help. And if you're not able to do that, then that's just not a good recipe. I mean, imagine a doctor that wasn't interested in curing people's medical problems. That just would not be a good thing, or didn't get excited or motivated by helping people's medical problems. That wouldn't be a good thing. So you should also probably quit the practice of law if you know there's no way you're going to be doing it in a few years. Some people just know deep down that this is not in their future. I felt that when I was practicing law fairly early on. What I spent a lot of my time doing was thinking about other things that I could do and essentially plotting my escape and what would I prefer to do rather than practicing. It just wasn't something that I enjoyed. I started buying books about other things I could do. I started ordering courses online about other things I could do. I would get on the internet during my free time, lunch and so forth, and research other things I could do. So clearly, for me, I was in the wrong profession. And you may be like that. And if you are, you'll know it. I mean, I remember before my first law firm job after graduating from law school, I remember being at the bar exam, studying for getting ready to take the bar exam, and literally reading books about other careers that I could do with a law degree. That probably really should have shown me early on that this just wasn't a profession that I should be in. And if you know that practicing law and you really want to do something and you know different and you know that you just won't stick with it, then you probably should try to leave sooner rather than later before you spend too much time doing it, and you may lose valuable years of your life that you could have been doing something that would be more productive for you. And the only problem would be is if you're in an environment that's bad and that's why you're plotting. I mean, you have to know deep down, like in your soul, that you will not be doing this and you do not want to be doing this. And if that's where you're coming from, then you should leave. And there's certainly lots of cases to be made that you may be in the wrong environment. So the wrong environment oftentimes for attorneys is in a very large law firm, or it can be working for one individual or one partner or a few partners that you don't like very much. And those are reasons to, move environments. And you may be actually naturally suited to being an attorney, but if you're in the wrong environment, then that could be the source of your unhappiness. And moving to a different environment is likely to make you much happier. And this, I told the story earlier, but lots of attorneys from major firms in New York and Chicago and Los Angeles and San Francisco often quit the practice of law just because they're working so hard, but they have very, very good credentials, and they just don't see practicing law somewhere else will ever be satisfying, when the fact of the matter is it's all about work. It's just all about working in a large law firm, which is in the environment, which isn't something, that, you really need to blame the practice of law. So, but a lot of attorneys that are in large law firms, they will think, well, if they're not doing the best, if they're not advancing there and they can't see themselves advancing in another large law firm, or if they involve their ego and they say, well, I would never practice in a small firm, I would never have my own practice, and all these sorts of things. The only thing that I care about how other people see me, that's not probably the reason to practice law. I mean, you should not practice law. You should continue practicing law if it's something that motivates you kind of instinctively. The other reason you should quit the practice of law, even temporarily, but, and often this is because you're at a major law firm, but a lot of people that do this are really causing a lot of harm to their health, and it can kill them. I was talking to a friend of mine the other night. I had dinner with him on Sunday, and we talked about a few different attorneys that we knew. One that had died, at the age of 40 from a heart attack in the firm. Another guy that I knew that I worked with for several years. He became a partner, a large law firm in New York, and was working all these crazy hours. And he went home for Christmas one year to visit his family, and literally like walked in the door. And this guy was probably in his mid 30s. He literally, or mid to late 30s. He walked in the door at Christmas and had a heart attack and died. I mean, I literally couldn't believe it because I'd spoken to him quite recently. So a lot of times, when you're in these very high pressure environments, or if you're just the sort of person that works extremely, extremely hard, I mean, it can actually, and I've seen so many examples. I mean, I can probably count, like, God, I mean, I don't know. I had another case happen where I owned a building in Pasadena, California, and I rented it out to 3 or 4 lawyers. There's a law firm and a small law firm. Anyway, and then there was an attorney that I'd worked with that had helped me with some stuff. And he was just like so driven but stressed out by it. And he ended up dying somehow in his house and wasn't found for 2 weeks. So, he just completely threw himself into it in a bad way. And certainly people die from all sorts of things in different professions. But I've seen it, really hurt people because they put such a priority on their clients or impressing the people they work for. And you can do a tremendous amount, of damage to you. And it could, drive you to a nervous breakdown. And it does. People can't cope. And when that happens, they should take time off. I mean, I've seen even first year attorneys like lose it. I saw one woman I worked with that had gone to Harvard Law School and then had gone to work for the office of a New York law firm, a big one in Los Angeles. And she'd been a cocaine addict when she was very young. She'd been a model, and then gone to law school probably when she was in her late 20s, and had quit these drugs and gone to rehab and everything. And then she got back into the stressful environment and started smoking crystal meth and kind of went crazy. And the same thing happened to another attorney that I knew like a year or two later. And he actually kept a fan on his desk because he was like so hot, using these drugs and stuff to keep going. So a lot of times people will get addicted to substances, so drugs or alcohol and all sorts of things, because they just can't deal with the stress. And this particular job, even if they're good at it, puts them over the edge. There was a series or a long article written by an attorney, and I think he was at Cooley Godward and a partner at Cooley Godward. Where was he? In San Diego. And this whole article about how it just destroyed his marriage and got him addicted to all these drugs, and he just couldn't stop and died. It was just too stressful. And so a lot of people will get into positions where, where they're constantly finding themselves driving away their spouses. It's not difficult for them to maintain relationships. They even have a difficult time keeping friends or making friends because they're so unhappy with their work. And if this happens to you, then you should probably stop, because it is a very difficult profession. And sometimes people even, commit suicide because of the stress. I personally don't know any attorneys that did. But I've certainly, heard about it happening, but not to anyone that I've ever practiced law with. And so sometimes people that are doing this will find themselves hospitalized for stress, or they will get cancer prematurely, or heart disease, and all these things that may have happened if they weren't practicing law, but certainly practice of law could have hurt them. Other people will do like gain an awful lot of weight. That actually happened to me when I was practicing law. Like, I just wasn't exercising ever. I was just eating at my desk all the time, just not living, a healthy lifestyle. And I couldn't in the environments that I was in. And so because of that, became very unhealthy. And had I done that for the rest of my career, I probably, just because of the way that I'm motivated to work extremely hard, whatever I'm doing, and especially when I'm trying to impress others, probably would not have been, done myself very well. So taking care of yourself, like emotionally and also physically, is very important. And a lot of people in whatever environment they're in can't do it. So sometimes it's just a question of the environment you're in, but other times it can be a question of just how you work when you're practicing law. And if you cannot see your health or psychological health or physical health ever improving, then it's probably something that you shouldn't, be doing. And because it's just not a healthy career for you. And one way to think about the practice of law in a career, especially if you're in a law firm, is that if you start practicing at the age of 25, I mean, you have to realize that this is probably going to be your job for the next 50 years, unless you decide at some point you're able to do something else. So if you can't see yourself being healthy and enjoying what you do for the next 50 years, then it's probably something, again, that you shouldn't be doing. I mean, you need to take care of yourself physically and emotionally. And if this job is not going to ever do that for you, then you're not in a good situation. Some people are physically and mentally stressed because they're not doing as well as they could, and they're stressed by that. Or sometimes it's the work environment. Sometimes it's just the way you work, and so that holds you back. Another thing that's one of the most important things that I can think of for leaving the practice of law is if you're trying to do it for money. And practicing law is not a good way to make money. Certainly the salaries are very high when you're young, but can be very high. But money is not necessarily something that should motivate you. Lots of people are motivated by money and think that the more money they make, the more important they are, the more they can buy, the better they feel about themselves, and they want to continually more and more money. But practicing law is really one of the worst ways to make money. I remember when I was practicing literally in my first firm, and this guy walked in to my office. He was in my class, and he'd gone to West Point, and then he'd gone to Harvard Law School. And then before he went to Harvard, I think he had some sort of business. And he walked into my office and was saying, "This is like a horrible way to make money." And I was like, "Why is it a horrible way to make money?" He said, "Well, because the only way you'll ever be able to make money is billing your own time. And if you're billing your own time, you can only bill a certain number of hours for your time. Whereas if you were doing something like selling products, you can spend your time developing a product or finding a product to sell. And then you can sell, 1,000 or 10,000 units of those, and you're going to make a lot more money." And so there's so many professions where you can go in and make an incredible amount of money in a much easier way. I remember the city I grew up in. I met this guy that lived in one of the largest houses in the city, which I think today would probably be like a $5 or $6 million house. And he had this collection of Ferraris in his garage, and lived very, very well. And I, talked to him. He was a customer of mine. I had this asphalt business, and I talked to him about what he did. And you couldn't believe it, but his business was washing windows around the city of Grosse Pointe and then some commercial buildings in Detroit. And to make a long story short, he had all these crews that went out and washed windows. They would charge, $200 to $500 a house and wash their windows 3 or 4 times a year. Because Michigan, where I'm from, it snows and it rains and all this stuff. And the crews would make minimum wage, and each of them would make him thousands of dollars a day. And he had several of these crews out and had this lifestyle where he literally wasn't working, and people were just going out and washing windows for him. So, I find attorneys all the time that are in these professions, in this profession, where they're doing it because they just want to make money. And it can be a very unhappy profession if all you're trying to do is make money, because you're most of the time, unless you're like a personal injury attorney or mass torts attorney, you're going to be somewhat limited in terms of how much you can make based on your own time. Now, that's not to say that you can't make a ton of money as a partner generating a large book of business, because you definitely can. You can make millions of dollars a year, but you should be motivated still by wanting to help clients and wanting to, and and being enthusiastic about your practice area and all sorts of things. So if you are doing it for money, there are much, much better ways to make money. I read stories every day about people that are in their 20s and so forth that become billionaires and doing apps and all sorts of different things. And so you can make an incredible amount of money doing other things, especially with the type of skills that you learn in terms of a work ethic and figuring things out in law school, taking the bar, and also as an attorney. And, so it's just, you should never do the job for the money, because it's not really the best way to make money out there. There are far better ways of making money, far easier ways of making money. And you shouldn't be doing it if you don't enjoy it. I was talking to you about this guy washing windows. I've known bartenders that have made $5,000 in a weekend, serving drinks in clubs and bars and things. And there's just so many much easier ways to make money. And if it's not something you enjoy, then it's even worse. And if you're doing things for money, typically the people that are going to advance the most inside of law firms and inside of legal environments are the people that enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy it and you're just doing it to make money, it's a bad career for you. Another thing that you should quit if this is a problem for you, and for most attorneys this isn't, but a lot of people may be spaced out. They may be lazy and not want to work hard and avoid working hard. And regardless of what type of law you practice, you can't function if you're spaced out and lazy. You need to be very, very motivated, and you need to be really want to get things done and be alert. I placed I place a lot of attorneys, not a lot, but now and then I'll place one that just definitely is not motivated and lazy. I had an attorney that I placed about 6 months ago. He had failed the bar twice, but had gone to a top law school. I think it was like University of North Carolina or something like that. He'd failed the bar twice, and then had been unemployed for several months. I found a small law firm to hire him despite all this. And the law firm hired him. And you would have thought that after passing the bar and having been fired from his last job and having had like a really good pedigree, apart from that, that he would have gotten into the position that I got him hired for, and worked really, really hard. But it turned out that he was missing deadlines, was making excuses for not coming into work, kept saying he was sick, and all these different things, and was someone that just wasn't naturally motivated to do well. And maybe he was even a little lazy. I don't know, but probably. And so this is an example of someone that shouldn't be practicing law. And the firm called me and I spoke to them, and they even spoke to me before firing him. And I said, yeah, I mean, this probably isn't a good hire for you, and you should probably let him go. And there are people like that, and you may have encountered them, but and it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. You may just not be motivated and excited about practicing law, or you might be lazy. I saw one guy that uh, lost his job in a big New York law firm because he was expected to be there 8 a.m. Every Monday morning to get an email from a partner in another office that would send an email out to 15 different corporate associates saying different work that they could pick up and do. And he was not motivated to go into the office early in the morning, which is early in New York, on a Monday to get assignments, and ended up losing his job just because he wasn't motivated enough to do that. So you need to be motivated to go after work. You need to be motivated to do a good job when you're at work, and you just need to really be motivated. And not being motivated is something that is not good. You may also be uh, spaced out, meaning you just don't have the attention span for it. And if that's the case, then you probably shouldn't be practicing law as well. And you need to be someone that can sit down and work uninterrupted for hours at a time without a lot of breaks and focus on work. And if that's not the kind of person you are, then you probably shouldn't be doing it as well. And then finally, a lot of people are uh, easily manipulated and people pleasers. They don't want to. They want to get along well with others, and they want to be liked by others, and they're people pleasers. And this is the exact opposite of the type of person or attorney you should be. And I would say a good proportion of attorneys out there are people pleasers and easily manipulated. And some people just naturally, it's important to them to make people like them and to please other people. And I'm not talking about people that you may work for in a law firm. I'm talking about people that you may be up against in transactions or against in litigation, and you may be the kind of person that's very, very concerned with making everyone happy. And I see attorneys like this all the time. I mean, I have had multiple ones that I've worked with or that have represented me that are people pleasers. And people pleasers mean that if you're negotiating with another side about something, you prefer to make that person happy and like you rather than risk that they will very much dislike you if you take a position or make demands that may seem that they're going to object to. And if you're like that, you're probably better off in another profession. I One of the ways that I've seen this with people that I've worked that have worked for me, or and is that someone will propose some sort of deal to settle a case or to do something, and instead of like negotiating and getting um, doing the absolute best, are more concerned with making sure that the person likes them or getting a really good deal. This happens, this happens a lot of times. It happens in litigation a lot. And it happens also in corporate transactions. One of the things that is kind of a current that runs through the legal profession is oftentimes when attorneys from lesser firms go up against attorneys from larger firms. And I'm not saying that this is something that occurs 50% of the time, but it occurs a lot, like 20%, 30%, is the attorneys from the lesser firms will be so interested in having these attorneys from the bigger firms like them that they will often not get the best result that they could, or they're intimidated by their qualifications and don't get the best results that they should. So an attorney naturally needs to be someone that wants to get the absolute best deal they can for whoever they're working for, even if it sounds a little bit unreasonable. They will be very motivated by even getting an unreasonable result. And if you're not like that, you're going to harm your client, because being an attorney is about, helping the people you're representing, and not necessarily being so concerned about whether or not or how much that person likes you. And you're just not going to be a good attorney if you're not able to live with people disliking you and people being disappointed in you. I mean, lawyers that need to be capable of being assholes, and they also need to, not really have a lot of feeling if an attorney from the other side doesn't like them, but they're getting the best result they can for their client. And if you're the kind of person that doesn't like that sort of confrontation, if you're the sort of person that cares too much about what others think about them, then you're probably not in the right profession. And the right attorney, I mean, almost a good attorney almost needs to be like a little bit sociopathic. I mean, they are not afraid to hurt the other side because they want to be able to get the best result, and they do not sleep poorly thinking about the other side and what a good deal they got. I've worked with corporate attorneys that have helped people sell businesses and knew that the other side was just doing a horrible job. Maybe the other side that was trying to sell a business was just doing a horrible job and getting a horrible result, and they were just running all over them, and taking tens of millions of dollars away from someone that could have gotten a lot more money for their business if they knew what they were doing. And they don't feel badly about that. The criminal law attorney doesn't feel badly when they get one over on the prosecutor and get someone out of prison that's not a good person, or prevent someone from going to prison. I mean, the best lawyers take the side of their clients and try to get the best result, and don't necessarily care about how the other side feels. They just don't. It's not in them. And so if you're very sensitive to how people perceive you and how you come across to others, then and you don't want to disappoint the other side, or people are able to take advantage of you in negotiations or in litigation, then this isn't something you should be doing. You need to be naturally motivated to get the best result you can for your clients, and not care about how that affects the other side. It's just what it is. And you have to also not care. I mean, it doesn't, like, you cannot feel badly about getting the best deal you can for your clients. So these are kind of the main reasons. And I hope you took notes about this, because, or think through all this, because if you don't have these 8 things going for you, then you're probably in the wrong profession. And I'm not saying that to be mean to you or anything along those lines. I'm saying that to help you, because the best attorneys are able to do the absolute best job that they can for clients. They're naturally gifted doing this. They are motivated by helping other people. They're detail oriented. They don't care about what the other side thinks of them. And these are all characteristics that you basically need if you're ever going to have a long-term career practicing law. If you don't have this, then you're just not going to do well. So these are the reasons you shouldn't quit the practice of law. And I hope that listening to this, that I'm going to be speaking to you. One of the kind of fun things that I enjoy each day is I've always subscribed to the Wall Street Journal and New York Times. The New York Times always has all these articles that are very left wing about companies, how bad they are for oppressing the poor, about people that are working class not making enough money and being taken advantage of by companies, about people that are being discriminated against because of their sexual orientation and race, and then typically stories that are very supportive of Democratic people and then critical of Republicans. It's just how that newspaper works. And in reality, I mean, I think the New York Times actually is very good for international news and some other stuff, but it's just a lot of propaganda. And the way it covers stories and are just 100% most of the time biased towards a particular point of view. They look at things through a certain type of lens. You always know pretty much, if you pick up that paper, how it's going to come out on issues. The editorial page is just all the same thing, but even just their coverage of issues is an editorial based on leftist thinking. And the Wall Street Journal is just the exact opposite. It's about people that have succeeded under capitalism. It's about business and businesses growing. It's about how people have found ways to make money. It's stories about companies and how much they make and how different companies are succeeding, failing, the leaders of companies, and then all sorts of capitalist type thinking. It's a right wing publication. It's very critical most of the time of it takes the side of Republicans on issues then compared to Democrats, and it sides with people that have money and uh, writes things from a point of view that Democrats that are doing are wrong. And then the editorial page, it's much of the same thing. It's just right wing thinking. So that's two separate newspapers. I was reading a story. I remember this was actually a long time ago. It was about when Donald Trump was running for office the first time, and I picked up. I was reading both papers, like I read them, both, back to back. I mean, at the same time. And the New York Times had a article on the front page about how Donald Trump, like very few people, had shown up for some rally that he'd done, and it had a picture of some empty seats in the stadium that he was in, and talked about how hardly anybody had shown up, and then went on to mock the event, saying it was failed and everything, and talked about everything that was wrong with the event, and made it seem like no one was there. And then the Wall Street Journal, the same paper, also on the front page, talked about what a huge event it was and how over 30,000 people were coming, and they had to change venues to a stadium because there were so many people that wanted to attend. And then had quotes from people about why they liked Donald Trump and had come all over the country. So, at that point in time, the Wall Street Journal did not like Donald Trump, but the coverage was just completely different. But both papers covered the same candidate in different ways. And so, most people, Democrats, they prefer the New York Times over the Wall Street Journal, and vice versa. And so, people do not read typically read the Wall Street Journal, do not read the New York Times, because the point of view of the New York Times is not something that they like, and they think it's ridiculous. People that watch CNN will not watch Fox, and vice versa. I mean, people just are people read things and do things that that supports their point of view of the world and makes them confirms what they already think. And I don't know if you're a Democrat or Republican, but the odds of me changing your beliefs and switching you over to one side are pretty slim. I mean, most people are going to side with how they feel about something no matter what. I remember when I was clerking for a federal judge, it was the same thing. Everyone in the courthouse I knew, knew exactly how he would rule. He was a Republican, had been appointed by a Republican president, and always typically would rule on the side of companies and those with money, and was very harsh towards criminals. And it's the exact opposite. Liberal judges would often, employ the opposite approach, and they'll come down against people fighting companies, and they're more lenient towards criminals. And so this is just how the world works. I mean, people make decisions about others and different issues based on what they believe, and there's nothing like wrong with that. And people typically will treat other people in a way based on how they see the world. And you see the world probably through one sort of lens, and are generally going to be inflexible. If you watch a Democrat arguing with a Republican, there's very little flexibility, and people are always going to come out on the same size of things. So, and a lot of this is just how other people, people reach conclusions. And so, one way to think about all this is obviously, if you took a very conservative reporter at the Wall Street Journal and put them at the New York Times with people that were very liberal, they probably wouldn't be happy. And it's the same thing with the New York Times reporter at the Wall Street Journal. So it's just how things work. So I'm not making a difference between, or making an analogy just between Democrats and Republicans. What I'm talking to you about is work environments, and so you could be in one work environment that differs, is just completely different from another one. So different groups of people in different firms will see eye to eye and see the world in the same way. Different types of size firms may see the world a certain type of way, and because of that, I mean, you have to think about, like, is this an environment with people that I'm necessarily comfortable with, and does it work for me? Because if you are, you have in high school, you always have like the jocks, the people that are smart, the people that are popular, the stoners, and all these different types of people, and they're not necessarily comfortable with each other. I remember when I was in law school, I spent my first summer working in the Justice Department, and it was an interesting job. I mean, most of the people, almost everyone, left by 5 each day. People did not have, at least in the department I was working in, they were pretty frumpy. They weren't that interested. They didn't seem that motivated. They seemed very tired and bored. The offices were decades old, and cinder blocks, and just very depressing. Very few of them had windows. No one seemed to be decorating their offices. And when I got there, I really very quickly realized that it wasn't going to be a place that I was going to be interested in working in the long term. And it was the same thing. There was a very drab cafeteria in the office, and people would go down there each day and sit very silently, just eating, and just and no one seemed that enthusiastic. Even their eyes a lot of times were bloodshot and glassy. I don't know what that was. The men would often wear the same suits to work uh, day after day, several times a week. And I don't think I could have lasted very long there, or been happy. It's just I would not have enjoyed myself. It wasn't a particular department that I thought was fun. I mean, the people seemed like zombies, and I used to, when I would leave work each day, I remember I would walk out of the office and down to catch a train, and there were other government workers there, and I mean, there were not just government workers, but there would be people that were coming out of law firms grabbing late lunches and stuff, and they actually, and well dressed, and they actually looked healthier to me and happier and more confident. And I decided right there that I wanted to work in a law firm and not the government, because this just seemed like an environment that was more natural to me than whatever this was going on in the Justice Department, in the department I was in. So, and the funny thing is that I remember the department I was in, the people were just incredibly well qualified. There were like tons of people from Yale Law School, and they'd done all these great clerkships, and so they were actually probably more qualified than the people that were working in the law firms, at least as a general rule. But at the same time, it wasn't something that I, felt comfortable with. So let me just see here. Sorry, I went the wrong way. Yeah. So one of the things that I think of is, that a lot of times that people that are unhappy are just in the wrong environment. And because you're in the wrong environment, you may be unhappy. That may have nothing to do with the practice of law. You may be thinking that you only need to work with a major firm, or that's really all you want. And if you're not in that environment, you think that you're concerned about how you look to others, but oftentimes you're just with the wrong group. And for me, the Justice Department was not, at least that particular apartment. There's tons of departments there, but that is not something I ever would have, fit in with. And for me personally, lots of groups would be the wrong fit. Large law firms, probably not a good fit because I would have resented people having control over my future. I probably would have had more control in a smaller firm. And I did enjoy a lot of things about practicing law, but it's all about the environment. So one of the first articles that I wrote when I started recruiting was a article, I'm sure it's still up, it was called Firm Culture Matters Most. And most people are just in the wrong environment that are unhappy. They're often in the wrong culture. And if they were in the right culture, the right group, they probably would do much better. I mean, some law firm environments are very conservative, others are very liberal, others are the people are just not that pleasant. Other people, other places, they're happy. And so you need to find an environment where you fit in. And oftentimes, just because you're in a wrong environment doesn't mean that you wouldn't enjoy practicing law. I mean, you have to find yourself in the right environment where you're happy. I know it's funny, again, I keep bringing up Yale Law School, but a lot of people from Yale Law School would never be happy in a law firm, even though they're extremely well qualified. They're happier doing public interest or the government, which you can see a lot of them go to. A lot of people would be much happier having their own law firm, as opposed to working for someone else. And but the fact is that if you're unhappy, a lot of it may be not because you're not qualified to practice law or you don't have the aptitude. It's just because you're in the wrong environment, and different environments can make different people happy. I was working not too long ago, like a month or two ago, with a woman that had worked for a large law firm, and then she'd gone to work with the EPA and had been at the EPA for like 6 or 7 years. And I got her a job with a very good law firm, and she accepted the job. And then 2 days before going there, she just knew in her heart that she wouldn't be happy working in a law firm environment again. And then after months of interviews and looking for a job, she just came back to me and she said, I just can't do this. I can't go back into a law firm because I know I'm going to be much happier working in the government and staying there. So that was something, that she knew made her happy, and the other option didn't make her happy. So that was a question of the practice setting, and a lot of people are afraid to leave large law firms because they're concerned about how they would, how they would appear to other attorneys in large law firms if they did public interest work or worked, in a smaller firm or something else. And so a lot of people, may find happiness in another setting, or just in a firm with a different culture. Even large law firms have different cultures. I mean, it's very funny, but there's, a lot of older firms around the country that have been around for 50 plus years have very unique cultures. I mean, someone that's happy at Latham and Watkins might not be happy at White and Case. I mean, there's just different cultures for different firms. And so many times you may be unhappy, even though you're a really good attorney, you may be unhappy at different types of firms. And there's always been people in society. It's not as much anymore, but people used to be afraid if they were coming out as gay, for example, and they lived in silence, and they weren't able to be the kind of person they were, or let people know where they worked the kind of person they were. Sometimes people, in that situation would marry someone of the opposite sex, even because they felt pressure to do that, and were hiding and unhappy. I've seen people be married and have kids and things when that's not really, what they wanted to be with someone of the same sex. I mean, you can make all sorts of mistakes and be in the wrong environment than other people. Sometimes people, would be unhappy coming out as gay in rural Utah, but have absolutely no problem with that if they were in San Francisco. And so the environment we're in really allows us to be the type of person we want to be. And some sorts of environments will support this, and others won't. I run across law firms all the time that are just very interesting because they have just certain types of people. Not too long ago, a couple of years ago, I was working with this guy, and he was at a law firm um, that had all these people that have been college athletes. It's just, and that was the majority of the people there. They just, that was people they felt comfortable with. I've seen other law firms where, people, were primarily gay. I mean, it's just, it doesn't, matter. If you want to, I mean, you can usually find an environment that's going to make you happy. And what I find a great deal of the time is that people that quit the practice of law are often people that shouldn't be quitting. People from major law firms and major law schools just get a bad taste of practicing law often when they're working for a major law firm, even though it would be much different for them if they were in a smaller law firm. I tell the story. I tell it so much, but I'll just tell it again. I mean, if you've been on my webinars before, then you've probably heard it. But when I was clerking, I clerked in the city, Bay City, Michigan. There were not a lot of junior attorneys there. There were like maybe 6 or 7, uh, and and so I was a clerk in the city. So I was a young attorney, and there was a group for all these young attorneys where we would get together. Uh, got together like maybe 3 times for drinks or something. And after 20 plus years of having been away from this clerkship, I went back and looked up all those people that I'd known when I was younger that were also junior attorneys, and they were all at the same law firms. They had the firms were small, small law firms in the city that the clerkship was in or around the city, and they were all there. Whereas very few people that I went to law school with stayed at the same firms, if any. Uh, they'd all moved around or done other things with their careers, but people that were in these smaller law firm environments that, by the way, gone to like University of Michigan and other good law schools, were still there. And that to me said something that those people probably had an aptitude for practicing law, and that environment, was much different. So people often without the best qualifications, so people that didn't go to the top 50% of law schools, often don't quit. It's the same thing with a lot of times people that go to work for the government or public interest, or so I often believe that the majority of people that end up quitting the practice of law are quitting because they've just found themselves in one wrong environment or another wrong environment, and because of that are unhappy. So what I would say to you is that if you're unhappy practicing law or considering it, one of the reasons you may be in that position is you're just in the wrong environment. And if you make changes, whether it's working in a different law firm environment, a different size city or market, or a different size firm, or a different practice setting, you could actually be very happy and very good at it. And you shouldn't be giving up just because you're in the wrong environment. I spend a couple hours a day reviewing resumes, and then my remaining hours I'm typically spending speaking with attorneys and then law firms about attorneys. And what I notice often is people will move just to a lot of different firms, and they'll have all these explanations for moving to each firm. And sometimes people have moved to 5 or 6 firms and 5 or 6 or 10 years or something, and but they're just different firms, and each firm, one after another, they have all these different explanations for leaving, and when you put them all together, they probably don't make a lot of sense. And what I believe with a lot of these people is they're just in the wrong environment. A law firm is not the right environment. The other thing that happens to a lot of people is people will get fired. Sometimes people will get fired once or twice in their first couple jobs. And it's very common. People will quit because they got fired when they probably wouldn't have gotten fired if they were in a different environment. If you're in the wrong environment where people don't like you and see the world the way you do, then you're probably going to be unhappy. And so that's one reason. But people most often will lose jobs not because of the quality of their work. I mean, they will lose it for that, but people will lose jobs because people don't like them. That's really the main reason. If you lose a job, you've probably pissed someone off, and that person or group of people that you pissed off will have something against you. People will lose jobs for making multiple mistakes where they are just sloppy. Sometimes they'll lose jobs for not working hard enough. Sometimes they'll lose jobs for making mistakes with clients. Other times, they'll often lose jobs because they don't have enough work or the firm doesn't have enough work. Firms will often let people go if they don't have enough work and make the reason that the person's lost their job seem about the attorney when it's really more about the law firm not having enough work. And then often people will just lose jobs because you become more of a cost center than a profit center, and having fewer people around will make the firm make more money. And then a great percentage of the time, people will lose jobs just because they don't fit in. It's a bad match. I I saw a woman get fired from a firm years ago in San Francisco or Palo Alto, and she didn't feel like she fit in with the people. She was very smart. She'd gone to Berkeley for law school. She didn't feel like she fit in. And then one day, she was just taken by surprise. Someone walked into her office and fired her and asked her to leave. And this is at a major law firm. And she said, why? And they said, well, you just don't fit in here. It's just not a good fit. And that's literally, I mean, I couldn't believe that the law firm did this, but people can get fired from that. One woman or one person I know who's now a general counsel of a company walked in, and and the same thing happened. She was told that she wasn't a good fit, and they asked her to leave. And this is just something that can happen in law firms, if you're not a good fit. And this particular woman that I'm thinking of, the one that not the transportation related company, but the one I'm talking about, she I was able to get her a position with a major American law firm, and she did very well before moving in-house. And when she was initially had lost her job, she was just so taken back that she was thinking about leaving the practice of law. So I did everything I could to get her a job. It was actually very funny. I was single at the time, so I took out someone that was in the recruiting role in the law firm and ended up, asking the person out, but later after she got a job. But I'd taken the person to lunch and made a really, in-person, in-person plea for her and got her a job. So, I remember when this woman lost her job, she was thinking about moving up overseas and backpacking and all sorts of stuff, or putting her stuff in storage. And she was less than a week away from doing this when her offer came through. So I've seen all sorts of situations where various attorneys were on the ropes and getting ready to leave the practice of law because of a bad experience. Often they were fired. And if you've been fired from one or multiple jobs, you should also realize that this happens to most attorneys. Most attorneys will get fired at least once and often multiple times, and they could be very, very good attorneys. And they think they should leave the practice of law because of that. And you should always take it personally. I mean, if you lose a job, you should think about what could you have done differently and what do I need to change? But just getting fired is not something that should necessarily, make you think that you should leave the practice of law. It's actually normal. And in most cases, if someone doesn't like you, you're in the wrong environment, or maybe you made some mistakes that you can fix, or maybe you missed deadlines, or who knows, but you can always learn from these experiences and get into, a different environment, just like I was talking about with the Wall Street Journal versus the New York Times. Just working with different people can make you happy. And someone that writes romance novels might not be a good journalist in a newsroom. I mean, you just need to be doing be in the type of environment and doing the type of work that works for you. And And the other reason that I see people leave the practice of law, and this particular one just to me is extremely depressing because it doesn't need to happen. A lot of people will leave the practice of law and do something else because they're unable to find a job. And most of the time, attorneys that are unable to find a job don't know how to find a job. And it's actually very easy to find a job because regardless of the city you're in, I mean, unless you're in a very, very small market, there's tons of solo practitioners, there's tons of small firms. There's always places you can apply to, even if they don't have openings, and get a job. So it's actually very easy for anyone to get a job. Maybe not a high paying job, and maybe not the job you want, but it's very easy to find a job. So you never need to quit the practice of law to get a job. If you want to work in a good sized firm in New York City, it can be very difficult because there's people there with very good qualifications. So unless you fit a certain mold, it can be difficult. It can be difficult to get jobs in certain markets and certain practice areas if it's slow. It may be difficult to get a job in a very small area of the country if there's not a lot of attorneys. But if you're looking for a position, regardless of the state you're in, there's so many places that you can work. It just boggles my mind. I mean, in California, there's 1,000+ cities. The same thing in most states, Illinois or whatever it is. And in every one of those cities, there's going to be jobs. So you need to be able to use a lot of sources and apply a lot of places if you want to get a job. If you're using a recruiter, then you want a recruiter that's not afraid to get you out to lots of firms and help you apply to a lot of places. And I see all sorts of people leaving because they think it's too difficult to find a job, and this is just absolutely crazy. If I was representing someone that was going all out, I mean, I have 25,000 law firms that have given us jobs or we've worked for in the past. I mean, it's just absolutely insane how many people, have jobs and how many different, places you can work. And it's just, it's never a reason to leave because you're just not doing your job search properly. Sometimes people will sit there for months on LinkedIn or Indeed, like just applying to jobs and not getting anything. And, they probably haven't done everything they can to get positions. I often, see people that just transition from really high-powered firms to doing something much that wouldn't seem as important, but become incredibly successful. And it's very interesting when I see this because when I see people that have gone from major firms to working in different types of practice areas where they may be representing individuals, I always love talking to these sorts of people because they might leave a job paying 3, 4, or even $500,000 a year from major law firms, and then they take these jobs that pay 80,000, and then all of a sudden, they're so happy. They love their job and they're motivated by it, and they're able to bring in clients and make even more money, and they love meeting people and whatever. If they're family law, they like the drama, and it's really cool when I see people that have been able to find a practice setting or a practice group that makes them happy. And even though they thought about practicing law, they just needed to change the environment. And so I just want to make sure you understand that, and you should also understand, if you're a junior attorney, the differences between what you are now versus what you can become. Junior attorneys are soldiers, meaning their job is to do work for others, to follow direction. And during that period of time, hopefully they're learning a practice area. So once you learn a practice area, you have a skill for life. And then if you're watching partners that are generating business and all sorts of things and start to learn from that, then you're done with an apprenticeship. An apprenticeship is not as fun as actually having being an attorney with business and so forth. Your job as an associate, at least the first 5 years of your career, is to be a apprentice, and you actually get paid for doing it, which is, and paid well in most places. So you become proficient. And once you get proficient at that, you can go out and start generating business. And once you start generating business, you have essentially a business. You have clients that are paying you for work, and then you're able to go to, and law firms essentially work for you. They provide you with a brand, they provide you with office space, they provide you with other associates, they provide you with associates, and so far. And you have clients that need you and take your advice and that you work with personally. It's a completely different job, and it's the job you'll have, for the rest of your career, and you'll have employment security. Any attorney that has a decent amount of business has employment security. Because they can, those clients will always pay them for their work, and they can always get more and more clients. So, this type of job can be a lot more fun for people than being an associate, and you'll feel much differently when you have more control over your career after that period. I've seen also associates that were once very serious about leaving the practice of law, and now they're partners at major U.S. law firms, and I see their names like mentioned in news articles and things, and them quoted, and I enjoy that because I see people that have actually moved from the position of being associates to these people that have so much more self-confidence and are nationally prominent right now. And often it's just, for me, it's actually kind of emotional because I see these people that were one time very confused and very unhappy, and yet now here they are, like at the top of the legal profession after sticking with it and getting through these very difficult apprentice periods. So, generally, most people, you have to think about this from, from the point of view of kind of what's going on. Most people, went to law school because they wanted to be attorneys, and if you started practicing law, I mean, presumably you've committed your life to this, and so why would you want to quit? It doesn't make a lot of sense for early attorneys many times unless they follow into the group of people that I mentioned earlier. I don't care if you were fired or can't find a job, or are too stressed out in a large law firm, or you feel like you don't fit in, or you think that people around you, especially as a junior attorney, think you're stupid, or if you find the work you're doing not something that you enjoy. The odds are, I mean, more than 50% probably, that you probably shouldn't quit, and because you will get through whatever you're dealing with, in the short term. So, you just need to make sure you find a place where you're using your skills and where you're happiest. And so my hope for you would be that, if you do believe, you can continue practicing law, then, you do. But you certainly, don't need to become a different person. And so if you're coming up against a lot of resistance, you're probably, unless you're following, kind of what I talked about earlier, then you probably should be practicing law. So I will take a quick break just for like a minute or two. And then when we come back, I will answer questions about the presentation or any questions you have. I love answering questions each week because I love hearing from, what people are thinking. There's, just a few things I wanted to bring up real quickly. There's just alternative careers that you can do. And I think, doing something along those lines is often a good idea. So I'd love to hear some questions about that. I'd love to find, one thing, those are kind of, any types of questions like this you may have. Okay, first question. How can I tell the difference between genuine burnout that requires a break versus dissatisfaction with my current, make sure I get this, current employer. Let me see. A role that can be resolved by switching jobs. Are there any specific signs or patterns that suggest staying in the profession, but making a change is a better choice? So most people, if you're burned out for two reasons. One of them typically means just too much work, and it could also be too much stress for the types of people that you're working with, or it could be just the environment that you're in or the practice setting. So you always need to remember that different firms have different cultures, and if you interview with enough places, you may find a culture that's a better fit for you. Every firm is not the same. So what most attorneys do, and this is probably you, is they interview with different places, and they may just get one job. So they never really have the opportunity to compare a lot of different places. So one of the things that I recommend for most attorneys, if you're even the least bit, if you don't feel like you're going to be happy wherever you are, you really should always be looking for a job. That means applying to jobs as they become open and taking the opportunity to talk to a lot of different places, because you will find different cultures in places where you feel happy, and places that you're not. And you can usually get a pretty good sense of, when you walk into a law firm and talk to a few people, if these are the kind of people that are like you, that you feel like you could work with and do well with, or if these are the type of people that aren't your type of personality, the type of people that you wouldn't be comfortable with. And I always had a really good sense, and still do, of the cultures of different firms when I go into them, just because they're all so much different. They're all they're all places where either I feel comfortable or not. And I remember interviewing with one firm um, in Los Angeles, and it was like one of the scariest uh, places that I've ever interviewed. I remember, just you couldn't hear a single thing in the firm. Everything was completely quiet. Everyone had their doors closed. None of the people seemed happy. And so, at least to me, and maybe, obviously that type of culture worked for some people. So you have to think about the culture that you're in, and then you also need to think about the practice setting, because different practice settings, working for a certain type of in-house company might make you a lot happier than a law firm. Working like a law professor, for some people, some people are completely suited to being law professors. It's very funny. I mean, I come across these people regularly too. I mean, there's just different types of personalities that do well in the practice of law in different practice settings. So thinking about different practice settings that may make you happy is a very good way to hear places. So someone says the dogs in the background are extremely distracting. Yeah, I agree. I'm in Malibu, and I had to flee my house, and all these houses like pretty close by, within a mile away, burned down. So I'm usually in a much quieter place. I've been questioning my career choice for years, but financial obligations and the fear of starting over keep me stuck. How do I balance these practical concerns with a need to pursue something more fulfilling, without jeopardizing my financial stability? Yeah, so most people that are having a difficult time leaving the practice of law have different financial obligations. So that's something that really traps a lot of people and makes them unhappy. So, one of the things to potentially make you happier would be, again, to try to put yourself in an environment where you're happier, or paying off your expenses, just getting out of whatever you're doing, and then getting into something new. So that would be my recommendation. Just limiting your expenses if you need to, and then selling your house or whatever it is, to try to find some place you're happier. I'm actively considering leaving my current firm, but may want to return to law in a few years. How do I frame the decision to potential employers later on so it doesn't harm my chances of re-entering the field? So that's actually a really good point. It's, people, you certainly can leave a law firm or the practice of law and try to go back. The problem with leaving the practice of law is most people that leave once are almost always going to leave again. I was uh, talking to a partner last week that had been a partner at a major law firm, and he had quit as a partner and had enough money saved up to live for several years. And now he's in his late 50s and has run out of money and wants to go back practicing law with a law firm. And when he was practicing, he was making, at least a couple of $1 million a year and doing very, very well. But when and he saved money, but then he left and he got married and bought a house and had all these obligations. And now he's at the point where he wants to go back. But what happened to him was he'd been at a major firm and had ended up quitting 3 times or taking time off 3 times, and had been friends with it was a big firm. I mean, the partner that had started the firm, and but no longer could go back, and because he quit 3 times, and this time it had been for years. So and he was in a situation where he wants to go back, and his odds of going back are to getting a job in another law firm are very, very slim. Not only because he hasn't been practicing for quite a while, but also because he left. And so if you leave a law firm and you leave the practice of law, even for many times, several months, it's much harder to go back. The reason being that most law firms are going to hire, and you would too, someone that's currently employed and committed to this than someone that's left. If you've left, it's obvious to law firms that you've left because you were either unhappy or fired or not motivated enough to get another position. And so you're going to have a much harder time getting a position. So what do you do if you left? Well, you certainly try to get back into a firm of the caliber that you're in. That's often going to be much more difficult because you're competing against people that haven't done that. So most of the time you'll need to move to a smaller law firm that will hire you based on your qualifications. It may not be as good as you're capable of working at, and then move up from there. But it's very difficult to get a job when you're unemployed versus employed. That's why if you're ever in a firm where you think you're going to lose your job, or you're ever considering leaving, you need to make sure and realize that if you do leave, it's going to be much harder for you to get another position than if you stay where you're at. And that's always kind of been how it's worked. You can go to smaller markets, or you can work in a smaller firm, or you can get a job in a different practice setting. So there are jobs that are easier to get than others. Many times there's government jobs that are easier to get. There's all sorts of different types of things you can do. But if you leave, it's going to be much more difficult for you to go back than if you don't. So that's something that I would just, always think about if you're thinking about leaving. I'm glad I did this webinar. I was actually going to cancel it, but then I finally, because I was looking for a hotel, and all of the hotels within like 15 miles of where I live are all booked because everyone's fleeing. Let's see, okay, let's see. Okay, what questions should I ask during interviews to determine whether a prospective employer generally invests in the long-term well-being and development of attorneys? Well, that's actually a good question. And one of the things that is important to understand when you take a job in any firm as an associate is you're essentially there to be a worker bee. And many law firms do not invest in the long-term well-being and development attorneys. And because they do not expect often people to stick around. Now that's, or they don't want to keep people around. That's the case more so in larger markets than it is in smaller markets, but even in smaller markets, that can be the case. One of the things that happened to me recently is I was talking to this partner in a law firm that it was a decent sized law firm in like Orlando or something, and it was about 20 attorneys. And out of those 20 attorneys, like 15 of them were partners, and then they had 5 associates or something like that. And this guy literally said to me that, our associates are useless. We can always find new associates. And so we're not concerned about taking any of these associates with us. So in a lot of firms, the associates are just kind of tools, and really the firm is not going to be invested in keeping them around. Now that's different many times in smaller markets where there's just not a lot of attorneys that are, that they can hire to and then, and they'll keep them around and they'll kind of start their careers there and have a longer term career. But for the most part, that's kind of the position that you're going to be in. Anytime you're working for someone else, they're not going to be really that invested in you. So one of the things that most attorneys don't understand is they really need to, when you're practicing law, you really need to be able to develop your own clients and so forth in the long run. Otherwise, it's just you're always going to be working for someone else, and no one is going to take care of you. You need to take care of yourself and put yourself in a position where you're going to be happy in the long run. I mean, the general rule for an associate is you will go to work for a law firm and they will keep you there for 7 to 8 years, maybe longer, maybe 10. But at some point, you're going to be expected to get your own work. Now, that's not always the case. There are law firms that have large institutional clients and can make people partners and so forth without them bringing them work. But for the most part, that's kind of how the game works. And so, yeah, let's see. If I decide to stay in the profession, what steps can I take to protect my mental health and avoid falling back into a cycle of stress and unhappiness? Are there specific practices or mind shift you recommend for attorneys in high pressure environments? Yes. So one of the things is that you have to remember is no one in a high stress law firm is ever going to tell you not to continue working as hard because it's in their benefit to keep you working. So you need to do whatever you can to take care of yourself and to maybe not necessarily work as many hours as the law firm expects of you, if you can get away with it. But you need to make sure that you're able to carve out your own time, avoid work if you can, to stay happy. People that succeed in law firms are able to, do so in two ways. One is just by continually stressing themselves out and working incredible hours and being unbelievably dedicated and sticking around. But ultimately, you need to take care of yourself. So that means you need to be able to find time to do things like exercise and rest and get out of kind of that type of position. And if you can't do it, then you have to consider working in a different practice setting or under a different set of rules. I was talking to a partner on Monday, but he's got his own solo practice and he bills out at like $500 or $600 an hour to his clients and ends up working like maybe 1,000 hours a year. He was able to leave a large law firm and do that. Now he makes like over $500,000 a year and was thinking about going to work for a law firm and decided that that just wasn't for him. He wanted to be able to work on his own terms and stay there. So, you have to figure out like, what you can do to kind of eliminate, to be happy and to take care of yourself, because no one in any large law firm or any law firm is going to tell you not to work as hard. They're going to, that's how they make money. So you need to be able to take care of yourself. And the only way to take care of yourself ultimately is to, if you're in a law firm, is to be able to, develop, to set limits, or oftentimes develop your own practice, because then essentially, you're not working for anyone else. And that should be anyone's goal, working in a law firm, is to develop your own business. Okay, what should you do for someone who feels uncertain about their values or career goals after years of following a traditional legal path? How can I rediscover what motivates me professionally at this stage in my life? So I don't know how long you've been practicing. You may have been practicing for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. Most of the time, if you're unhappy doing that, or uncertain about your career goals, there's all sorts of different things you can do. Like I talked about earlier, like working in a different practice setting. You can work in a smaller firm or a larger firm, but many times you may not be in a career that you practicing law or just this career may not make you happy. And then what you need to do is you need to start kind of thinking about what else you would do. And then, I used to order books and courses and all sorts of things about different careers. And I actually found this career by accident. I was interviewing with law firms and was using a recruiter, and I saw what they did and I became very interested in it. And many times, if you just put yourself out there and start meeting people, then you will be able to find things. I had this thing happen not too long ago. I was at this conference for entrepreneurs, and I was sitting on a bus going back to my hotel room after this event, and I was sitting next to this guy that had been an attorney at a large law firm, and he had a client that was doing this in some sort of healthcare business. And in representing this guy, he discovered this niche in healthcare of something to do with stabilizing some certain type of patient after an operation that normally would take them a month to recuperate from, but with his methods, they would get better in 2 weeks. And I don't know how he discovered this, but and then he ended up quitting and starting a business doing this and became enormously successful. So many times, if you're unhappy doing what you're doing and you're looking for something new, you can often, just by getting out there and meeting different people, often find something that works for you. One thing I would be cautious about that is just something to think about is many attorneys, they're not business people. They've been exposed to working as an attorney. They don't have any business experience. And so if you decide to go into business or do something else, you need to be very careful. Like, is this something that I can really see myself doing well in? But other types of jobs, attorneys can do very well. I know a psychologist very well that was an attorney in a major law firm and decided he'd prefer to do that and is very happy, probably even making more money than he would have staying in a firm because he charges a lot of money and has a waiting list. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can do that are different careers, teaching, uh, you know, getting into business, going into a different practice setting, working for the government, becoming a politician, which, I'm sure uh, that, tons and presidents have been attorneys, Barack Obama, Kamala Harris. I mean, all these people, Bill Clinton, so many people got into politics. So there's just so many things that you can do. How do I transition from litigation to transactional work? That's a good question. And I think one of the reasons I like that question is certain people have the mindset to be litigators and other people have the mindset to be transactional attorneys. People that are transactional attorneys tend to be kind of have the mindset of uh, an accountant or someone that's like good at math and science and that sort of thing. Those type of people tend to do better in transactional work and tends to become more natural for them than people that are litigators. So people that are litigators are the sorts of people that have traditionally been interested in English and history and those sorts of things, as opposed to transactional attorneys that tend to be more motivated by doing math and science and that sort of thing. So sorry, I'm in this hotel lobby. It's very loud. I apologize. So how do you transition from litigation to transactional work? The easiest way to typically do that is with your own law firm. So if you are in a law firm and you're unhappy doing litigation, to try to start getting work from transactional attorneys there. Transitioning to transactional work, transitioning from litigation to transactional is not easy. So typically when you're trying to do that, you have two choices. But generally the easiest is to move to a smaller law firm to get that type of experience. So that tends to be the easiest way to do it, or with your own firm. And there are definitely different types of work. So let's see here. Some attorneys leave the practice of law only to discover they regret their decision. For someone contemplating this move, what are some practical ways to test alternative careers or industries without fully stepping away from law and risking irreversible career damage? So what I recommend I think I talked about this a little bit earlier, is if you're trying to do something different in a different career path, is really um, to start talking to a lot of people. One of the ways to test that is you can go to you can go in house, which is often one of the easiest ways. So people that go in house, if you do very well in a company, you can often move into other roles. So I know an attorney that went to a great law school, worked for a really good firm, and then went in house into a company. And then when he got there, he was an employment attorney. He did a lot of employment related work, and then they moved him into HR. And now he's head of HR at a major tech company. I'm not sure which one it is. I mean, it's not Google, but I mean, it's something like Uber or something like that. Um, with incredible job, and he was able to move there by going in house. So going in house is often an interesting way because you learn about business or other types of things. You often can find other careers and industries. It's very common for attorneys to go to work for clients that they have, and to learn about business and different types of things as in your career. Moving to another practice setting as an attorney is not something that's going to risk irreversible career damage. But if you want to work in a law firm, you should always try to stay in a law firm if that's what your long-term goal is. Because once you leave working in a law firm, it's very difficult to get back. Let me just see. Again, I apologize for the sound quality of this. It's very difficult being in this hotel. There's all these people. You said, great topic. I wish you'd heard it 30 years ago. You talked about lawyers needing to have the intrinsic motivation to help others, yet you also said lawyers need to be perfectly willing to be an asshole and hurt people in the name of getting the best outcome for the clients. Which is all that should matter? How do you score that? Well, by helping others, I mean helping your own clients. So that's kind of the name of the game. So yeah, you have to be so motivated to helping your own clients that you're not worried about getting what could be considered even a better than unfair result for your client compared to the other side. So that's just how it works. Okay, I'm a second-year attorney. I was hired for the family law litigation department at the law firm I'm at. Recently, I moved to a different department, estate planning. My supervisors told me it was because of my weak writing skills, and it takes me twice as long as a seasoned attorney to finish my work. How do I take it personally? My passion is helping families, especially children, hence you learn family law. I'm interested in estate planning, but not to the same degree. Should I stay? So that's a good question. So estate planning, the nice thing about family law is it's not necessarily a practice area that requires the best writing ability. It's not the amount of writing is not the same. If you don't feel like you have a lot of good writing skills, I actually think I would have told you like 2 years ago that maybe that was something that you should take seriously. But honestly, using ChatGPT right now, it's pretty incredible. I mean, you can put in your ideas and things about what you want to say. You can upload the other side's pleadings and have arguments made in response to them. I don't think being a good writer matters as much as it would have in the past, or being a fast writer, because I think that all attorneys right now should be using ChatGPT that are in different types of litigation positions, because it can drastically speed up your writing. And I would learn everything I could about doing that. And I do think you could probably write things now just as fast as anybody if you really learn how to effectively use ChatGPT. I think it's just awesome. I mean, it can uh, proofread documents for you. It can give you arguments you may have missed. It can put in case law. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. So I don't know, you know, if you should leave family law because of that. I don't think you need to. But if you like family law, the nice thing about family law is it's a practice area that's done by solo practitioners and small law firms. So it's pretty much very easy to find jobs doing family law. So if your law firm is putting you into estate planning and you would prefer to do family law, then I don't think you're going to have too much of a difficulty finding another position. Okay, let me just see here. I'm actually surprised this is such a popular topic. There were almost everybody that started this webinar today is still on it, which is a lot of times people drop off after the question. So I'm glad this is a popular topic. I apologize for the sound not being that good. Would you agree that the best advice for someone who is struggling in law is to do some deep self-assessment to figure out what they enjoy, what they're naturally good at, and how they can best give those talents away to help others? It seems like the winning formula for filling life with no regrets, knowing that one of the top regrets of them dying and working so hard had something that held no meaning for them personally, just to please others. Yeah, so I guess the biggest piece of advice I can give you is if you're not naturally good at practicing law and you don't enjoy it and it's not something that works for you, then you should try to find something that appeals to you naturally. I've seen attorneys do things like go to medical school. A lot of them, I've seen a lot of attorneys go to business school. I've seen a lot of attorneys start businesses, like pizza businesses that became very successful, all sorts of things. The benefit of being an attorney is that once you learn these skills and you become, once you become an attorney based on all the work you have to do to go to law school, the work you have to do to pass the bar, and then when you get into a firm doing that sort of work, most attorneys that go into other professions do extremely well. I mean, they far exceed whatever the norm is for the way people have done in other professions. And I would definitely recommend that because if you are unhappy practicing law, going into another profession, you're almost always going to be very successful at it, especially if it's something that appeals to you normally. And also, when you go into another profession that more fits you, then you're going to have more energy to give to it and be a lot happier. So, and again, I've seen people become screenwriters, become novelists, become doctors, go to business school and become investment bankers and do all these different sorts of things, and they're very valued there. I mean, JD Vance went to Yale Law School and he came out and very quickly was working for Peter Thiel and making, I'm sure he made tens of millions of dollars. I don't know what it would be, but I mean a lot. And I think that was in private equity or something. And then he became a senator and then he became vice president. I mean, people do all these things when they're, with their law degrees, or Bill Clinton becoming a law professor, or Barack Obama becoming a law professor. I mean, there's just all these things that you can do that, in your career that will often make you much happier than working in a law firm or doing something else. So you should, anytime someone with, a lawyer takes their skills and things to another profession, they almost always do very well and much better than they would have done had they continued practicing law. So for me, it was like the best decision I ever made for myself personally, finding out this other profession. It's related to the legal profession. And many times, all it takes is you have to be looking for something. And then if you look for something, different and you want to do something differently, then you're often probably going to do very, very well at it. And I know very few attorneys that left the practice of law and tried other things that didn't do incredibly well. Most of the time, they do much better and have much better careers than if they'd stuck where they were at. Okay, well, thank you everybody for being on this webinar. I apologize for the noise in the background, and I'm sure I'll be someplace normal next week, but thanks again, and glad everyone seemed to enjoy this topic. So thank you. Bye-bye. Have a nice rest of your day.